Masechet Avoda Zara Daf Samech He. Rav Yehuda Shtar Le Kurbena le'avidarna biyom edam. Rav Yehuda sent a gift to this non-Jew named Avidarna on a pagan holiday. Now, generally, that would not be allowed to give a gift to an idolater on the day of their holiday, because either they will actually use that very gift, if it's an animal, let's say, and sacrifice it to their idol because it's their festival, or they will be so happy because, look, oh, I got this gift, and then they will give thanks to their God for receiving this gift, and therefore the Jew would be aiding and abetting by inspiring the idolater to go and worship his idol. And so therefore generally this is not allowed. However, in this case, Rav Yehuda thought it was allowed because Amar Yadana be de la palach lavoda zara. I know Avidarna, he is not an idol worshiper. He's a ger toshav. He is a good guy. And I know he's not even though it is a pagan holiday, he doesn't celebrate this pagan holiday. And so Rav Yehuda said it's permitted to send a gift to Abidarna. Amar Rav Yosef, Atanya, Ezu ger toshav shokol shekibel alav bifnei shelosha chaverim shelo la'avod avoda zara. Rav Yosef challenged him, and he said, it says in a braita, who is a ger toshav? Only someone who accepted upon himself in front of three pious people, basically in front of a bet din, he committed himself not to worship idolatry. And this Avidarna, although he doesn't do idolatry, so generally, but he never officially declared in front of a court of three pious Jews that he is not going to do idolatry, and therefore that's not enough. He's not a ger toshav. If he did that, then you can send him a gift. But you only have his personal guarantee, not in front of a bet din. And Rav Yehuda answered, Ki tanyahi lahachayoto. That baraita, that who's a ger toshav? Only if he has these three people, that is for the law of sustaining him. If you have a ger toshav at this high level, that he is declared before three people that he will not do idolatry, then the Jewish community has to sustain him and give him charity and give him kindness, the same as they would a fellow Jew. That's the high level. However, even if he doesn't declare it in front of three people, but we know he's committed to monotheism, he doesn't follow idolatry, then that is sufficient that you can give him a gift on this pagan holiday. So these are two different criteria that apply to two different laws. ואמר רבא בר חנא אמר רבי יוחנן גר תושב שעברו עליו 12 חודש ולא מל הרי הוא כמין שבא אומות. Wait, but still it should not be allowed, Rav Yosef tells Rav Yehuda, because Rabba bar Chana said, name of Rabbi Yochanan, that a ger toshav for whom 12 months have passed and he did not circumcise himself in order to be a convert, we consider him like a heretic among the Gentiles. This is quite an astounding statement. It means that a ger toshav is kind of only a temporary status. You have an idolater. If he realizes the truth, and he comes, and he's a ger toshav, and he commits himself. We saw different definitions of a ger toshav. He commits himself in front of three. He commits himself to sheva misvot, maybe to 612 misvot was another opinion. Basically, it's a stepping stone towards becoming a full convert. And if he does not go through the conversion by getting a circumcision within 12 months, then we assume, oh, well, I guess he's out. How come he didn't circumcise? So that means he's an apostate. And therefore, he would not be considered a ger toshav anymore. But we would treat him like a heretic. If you treat him like a heretic among the nations, then you cannot send him a gift. And this Avidarna, he's been in this status for more than 12 months. He didn't convert, so therefore you cannot treat him like a ger toshav. That's the question. It's just astounding to think that every ger toshav has to actually convert within 12 months, or else he loses that status. But we answer, Hatam kegon shekibel alav lamul velo mal. That statement of Rabbi Yochanan is only talking about a case of a ger toshav who accepted upon himself to undergo circumcision and to convert, and then he didn't. See, if he says, I'm going to convert, he signs up for the conversion class, I'm going to get a circumcision, and then 12 months go by and he didn't do it, then we say he didn't do it, must be because he changed his mind, he changed his beliefs, and he went back to being an idolater. So then we treat him like an idolater. However, if he never accepted upon himself to do circumcision and to convert, he said, I love Judaism, I love the Torah, I believe in it, I believe in Hashem, it's all true, but I'm good, I want to stay with the Shev Misot B'nai Noach. That is perfectly fine. He can go forever. That's an ideal. For a Ben Noach to follow the Noahide laws, that's wonderful. He doesn't have to convert. Nobody has to convert. But if he says I'm going to convert, he plans on it and then doesn't, then that's a red flag that he didn't go through with it. It must be he changed his mind totally to become an idolater. But if he's a regular, just Ger Toshav that never accepted, then that's okay. And so that was the case here. Avidarna, he never committed himself to converting, and so he's proper. He can be a ger toshav for his whole life. Rava amtele kurbana lebar sheshach beyom edam. Rava similarly gave a gift to this guy named Bar Sheshach. He was a nobleman, and it was on a pagan holiday, and yet he sent him a gift. Rava says, it's okay. I know him. He does not serve pagan idols. He just stays away from that, and therefore I can send him a gift. It's not going to lead to him to idol worship. Now, just because he doesn't serve idolatry doesn't mean he's the highest quality person. Rava went to visit him and saw he's in his swimming pool up to his neck in rose water, and there are zonot without clothes on in front of him, walking around, maybe dancing, and so he's kind of a lowlife. All right, but still he's not an idolater. And then Bar Sheshach tells this rabbi, Rava, do you have anything like this in your world to come? Look how good things are for us, us non-Jews here. Rava says, our world to come is better than this even. Bar Sheshach is surprised. Can there be anything better than this? This is the best thing he could possibly imagine. And Rava says, yes, although you have all this luxury and material pleasure, it's true, but you still have the fear of the government upon you. This guy is a nobleman, and as a nobleman, it means he might be even in charge of a certain area, of a city. But still, there's an emperor above him. Whereas for us, we in the future, we will not have any fear of government upon us. Sounds like here that they're using the word alma de'ateh, the world to come, to mean this world that will come, meaning this world in the future. That all now the Jews are subservient and under foreign rule, but in the future, the Jewish people will have their own government and will not be subservient to anyone. So our future world is better than what you have here, because yes, although you're living in luxury, but you still have to answer to a king. And Bar Sheshach counters, what do you mean? What fear of government is upon me? Look, I'm a nobleman, I have my whole estate over here, and I don't have to answer to anybody. While they're sitting there and talking, a royal officer came to Bar Sheshach and says, get up, the king requires you. And so he had to get up. So that proved Rava's point. Yeah, you think you're so powerful here, you can sit in a pool of roses. However, look, in 1 minute, the king can come and summon you, and you have to leave that all. Ki nafik v'azil amar le, anade be'elemech hazeh lechu bishuta tifka. As Bar Sheshach was leaving, he gave Rava a blessing, and he says, any eye that wishes evil upon you, that eye should burst. If anyone tries to do you bad, then they should burst, because he's so impressed with Rava. Look at that. It's amazing. Rava, you were able to make such a great point. I thought I had everything great, but the truth is, you're right. I am under the king, the subservience of the king. Amar le Rava, Amen. Rava says, Amen. Well, thank you for that beracha. And the beracha came true, and Bar Sheshach's own eye burst. Meaning that Bar Sheshach, you could see from the opening line, he says, do you have Do you have anything like this in your in your world to come? Already Bar Sheshach is making fun of Rava, is putting down the Jews. So you see that Bar Sheshach, although it's true he gives Rava a compliment, he's like, wow, so impressed, but really deep down he had hatred to Rava, hatred to the Jewish people. He did not respect it, and therefore his own his blessing or his curse, Bar Sheshach's curse against the Jews' enemies, came true with himself, and his own eye burst. Amar Rav Papi, Iba ele lememra le mehai kera, benot melachim bikorotecha, niseba shegal mincha, bechetem ofir. Papi says that Rava should have answered Bar Sheshach's question from this pasuk in Tehillim. In other words, instead of just saying, in the future, we will not be dependent, we will not be subservient to any foreign government, he could have added a pasuk to it that says even more. This pasuk says, king's daughters are among your favorites. It's a praise of the king of Judea, saying that even princesses come from other lands, they come and they are subservient to you, king. At your right hand stands the queen in gold of Ophir. Which means in the world to come, which again is not some heavenly world, but rather this world that will be in the future, the daughters of kings from other countries will serve the Jewish king, which is going to indicate that those nations will be subservient to the Jewish nation. So not only will the Jewish nation be independent, but in fact the opposite, other nations will be subservient to the Jewish nation. So that's what Papi said. He should have quoted this pasuk to say something even better. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Iba ele lememre de le mehacha. Ain lo ra'ata Elohim zulatecha ya'aseh limhake lo. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says he could have quoted another pasuk from Yeshaya that regarding the future, no eye has seen it. God, aside from you, who will do for those who await Him, those who are faithful and await Hashem's deliverance, they will see something that no eye has seen. In other words, I can't even describe it. I'm not even going to say that it's independence or subservience from other people. It's something that's going to be unimaginable, and that would be an even greater response to Bar Sheshach. Wonderful story. Back to the Mishnah. That says, if a non-Jew hired a Jew, to the beginning of the Baraita was if he hired him to work with Yayin Nesech, then those wages are prohibited. A Jew cannot help out with Yayin Nesech. However, if the non-Jew hired the Jew for other things, he hired him to work in his field during the day, to go plant cucumbers, and so he plants cucumbers, and then sometime during the day, we'll see exactly when, he tells him, oh, can you, by the way, take this jug of Yayin Nesech wine and move it from here to over there? And he does it. Then the wages that the Jew receives are permitted, because the wages are for the permitted work that he's doing. And this carrying of the jug is just, by the way, it's just an aside. It's not the main reason for the wages. Even if he wouldn't do that, he would still get the wages. And so therefore it's included, it's subsumed, that work is subsumed in the permitted work that he is doing, and he can keep the wages. Now from our Mishnah, a simple reading of our Mishnah, it seems that it would be permitted for the Jew to keep the wages, even if the non-Jew did not say to take the barrel towards the evening. Now, let's say he said it towards the evening. Let's say he's working $20 an hour from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. $20 an hour for 10 hours, going to get paid $200 for working during the day. Now, let's say he's working planting cucumbers all day long for 10 hours. And then towards sunset, when the day is over already, he could stop working at that point. That's it. There's no more work. And now, right near sunset, the boss says, hey, can you take this barrel and move it from here to there of Yayin Nesech? And he does it. That's an easy case. For sure, that would be okay because he finished his work. He earned his wages for working for 10 hours until near sunset. Then at the end he says, do this. So that's just like a favor that he's adding on. And clearly in that case the wages would be okay. Yet the Mishnah does not say you have to specify that's towards sunset. It could be any time during the day, which means the Mishnah is being even more lenient and permitting this. It's just a small job that he's doing in the middle of the day, and so we don't count that as being a significant thing. He's getting paid for the cucumbers. He's not getting paid primarily for moving the wine, so it's permitted. Urmin hi hasocher tapoeli tote erev amar lo ha'aved havit shel yen nesech ממקום למקום שכר מותר. ta'amad amar לitote erev in kule yom ala. But we have a contradiction to the inference we just made from the Mishnah, and this contradiction is from a Braita that says if someone hires a laborer, and towards the evening, the boss says, move this barrel of yayin nesech from this place to that place, it's permitted to keep it. Do you see the Braita here specifies that it's only permitted because it was near sunset, and he earned his wages for the day already, therefore he can keep those wages, because that was finished, that work, and this is just an extra credit at the end of the day. But if he asked him to move the barrel in the middle of the day, then he would not be able to keep the wages. That's the inference from this Baraita. And so now we have a contradiction between the Mishnah and the Baraita. We're going to have two answers. Amar Abaye, ki tenan nameh matnitin damar le'totel erev tenan. Abaye says, the Mishnah also, we should understand that it's talking about towards sunset. That's why it's allowed only if it's towards sunset. Indeed, even in the Mishnah, although the Mishnah didn't say so explicitly, that's how you should understand it. And that the Mishnah's law is only permitted to keep the wages if he moves it towards sunset. Rava amar la kashya, had amar le ha'aver li me'ah chaviyot b'me'ah perutot, had amar le ha'aver li chavit b'fruta. Rava says, no, leave the Mishnah's wording as is, and there's no contradiction. In the Baraita, where it says it's prohibited to keep the wages unless it's towards evening, the Baraita says if it's toward evening, it's okay, but otherwise it's prohibited. That was talking about a case where the boss says, move for me this 100 barrels of wine for a total of 100 perutot. And most of the wine, let's say, is kosher, but maybe there's one barrel that is yayin nesech. In that case, it's prohibited for him to keep any of the wages because he gave one lump sum for the entire work, right? So he's understanding the Braita, not that it's a day laborer that's working for 10 hours a day, but someone who's laboring for a project. To empty out this whole warehouse of barrels, this is a job. Move all 100 barrels over here, move them to over there, and there's 100 barrels in there, and you'll get 100 perutot. So if he does that, but among the barrels there might be a barrel of yayin nesech, then he cannot accept any of the wages because some of that, part of that 100 is for that. If let's say he would move most of the barrels but leave one behind, he wouldn't get paid. So the payment is dependent on moving every barrel, and among the barrels is yayin nesech, so he cannot benefit from the barrels. That's the case of the Baraita, but the Baraita says if it's le'itote erev, meaning at the end of the job, he emptied out, he did what he had to do to earn the wage, and then he says, oh, there's another barrel over there, can you move it? Then that will be permitted because that wasn't considered part of the job that he accepted. Whereas Hadamar ha'aver li chavit befruta, the Mishnah is talking about a case where the original deal was, move for me, I have a lot of barrels here in this warehouse, move for me these barrels, and I'll pay you one peruta for each barrel. It was not a lump sum for the whole job, but rather the payment was for each and every barrel. In that case, let's say he moves 50 barrels. In the 51st barrel is yayin nesech. And then he moves all the rest of the barrels. In that case, altogether he moved 100 barrels. He can get the wages, take 99 perutot. And the one peruta, just reject or throw it out and get rid of it. But he can keep the rest of the wages. That's what the case of the Mishnah was talking about. V'hatanya. And we have a Baraita that supports this distinction of Rava, hasocher et hapoel v'amar lo, ha'aver li me'ah chaviyot b'me'ah perutot, nimset chavit shel yen nesech benehen, secharo asur. Chavit b'fruta, nimset chavit shel yen nesech benehen, secharo mutar. The Baraita teaches that if someone hires a worker and says, move for me these 100 barrels for a total sum of 100 perutot, and there is one barrel, even one, of yayin nesech among those 100, then he cannot accept any of the payment because it's all one lump sum for the whole job, and he can't get paid unless he does the whole job, and part of that job is yayin nesech, even though it's just 1%. So all the wages are prohibited. But if he was hired to buy the barrel, move for me these barrels. For each barrel, you get one peruta. If he does 10 barrels, he'll get 10 perutot. 20 barrels, he gets 20 perutot. And so he moves 100 barrels, but one of them was yayin nesech. He's allowed to accept 99 perutot. Just one peruta he cannot accept. The Braita continues and says, if someone hires a donkey to carry wine, then the payment for the rental is prohibited. This is a non-Jew, an idolater, has some yain nesech, and he goes to a Jewish guy who owns a donkey and says, I want to rent your donkey for a trip for a few days, because I want to transport yain nesech. It's prohibited. Ha tu la mali. Question is, why do we need this? Hainu resha. It's the same case as Resha. The Resha said, if an idolater hires a Jew to work with yain nesech, the wages are prohibited. This is just one application of that rule. Here, the idolater is hiring a donkey owner to move yain nesech. So obviously this is not allowed. Why do you have to give this specific case? And the answer is, Sefais terichale sechara leshebaleha afa pi she'niach goy legino aleha secharo mutar. We are only quoting this case of the donkey for the continuation, where we have a permitted case, and it says, if the idolater hired this donkey to sit on it, this is, can I use this donkey because I want to ride on it for a trip I'm going for 3 days. Then even though the non-Jew brings with him a jug of wine because he wants to drink on the way, so he carries in his lap, he has his carry-on, personal item. He brings a bottle of wine with him. So he's sitting there. He's sitting on the donkey, but he also has a bottle of wine. Then it's permitted for the donkey owner to accept the payment because the payment is primarily for the person who's sitting on it, and the jug of wine is just an extra item that he's not specifically getting paid for, and therefore is permitted. Because the Mishnah wanted to teach this case, which is permitted, so it set it up with Hasocher Tachamor, even though, yes, this would be obvious, it's included already in the Resha, but I wanted to give it this exception, and that's why I brought it. Lememra de lagin lav dina hu le'otube. Now, can we infer from this Mishnah that the renter does not have a legal right to bring a jug with him, right? Because if it's like when you go on a plane, so you're buying a ticket. What is included in the ticket? Well, certainly your body, you have a seat that you can put your body in, right? Is a carry-on also included? Well, it's a personal item, right? With a bottle of water. Is that included? Well, it seems generally, yes, right? You have a right to bring on a personal item, and you can also bring in a nice big bottle of water with you on the plane. However, if that right is included, like explicitly, then that would mean that when the donkey driver is giving the right to this guy to ride the donkey, included in it is the ability to bring a bottle of wine. Well, then it should be prohibited because he's renting out. It would be like, let's say he explicitly says, I want to rent this donkey I'm going to sit on it and I'm going to bring a bottle of wine. Well, in that case, it would be prohibited because he's getting wages for transporting wine. So therefore, it must be that when someone hires a donkey to ride on, then the bottle of wine is not included, right? This would be like a cheap airplane where, yes, you can bring your body, but no carry-on, no personal item. You can't bring not even a bottle of water on this plane. So it must be that that's the law. And that's why it's permitted, because the rent is only for the rider's body, but he is not paying for the bottle of wine, and that's why he can keep all of the wages. So that's what it seems from our Mishnah. But this is a contradiction. What do you mean he? הסוחר את החמור סוחר מניח עליה כסותו ולגינתו מזונותיו של אותו הדרך, מכאן ואילך חמר מעכב עליו. חמר מניח עליה שעורים בתבן ומזונותיו של אותו היום, מכאן ואילך סוחר מעכב עליו. We have a braita that teaches that if someone rents a donkey, the renter he has a right to bring also his garment, a water jug, and his food for the journey. Let's say it's a 3-day journey, so the renter, he needs his provisions for 3 days. In other words, according to this, a traveler has a right to bring a carry-on and a personal item and a bottle of water. That's a right that has to be respected. The owner of the donkey has to allow him to carry that, even though it's a bit of more of a burden on the donkey. These are included in the wages. So you see, this contradicts the inference that we just made. The Braita continues and explains the other on the other side also. Mikan ve'elach, if it's more, let's say the rider is bringing more than what he needs for the journey. He's bringing enough a big luggage that will last him for a month when he gets to his place. That the owner of the donkey can say, no, I agree to transport you with your personal items that you need for this 3-day journey while we're on the road. But you're going to carry more than that? You bring this big suitcase and a big trunk? No, that I did not agree that my donkey should carry that. You have to pay extra for that. However, on the other side, the chamar, the donkey driver himself, he's also coming along and he has to take care of his donkey. And so he is allowed to put on the donkey barley and hay for his donkey only for that day. Not for the whole ride. Let's say they're going on a 3-day journey. We can only bring enough to feed the donkey for that one day. He has to feed the donkey. You're not going to find food everywhere, but he'll find some food somewhere along the way. So only a day's worth. More than that, the renter can say, no, I don't want you to carry stuff. We're going to go slower if you bring so much stuff. And so the renter can say that you, the owner of the donkey, can only bring 1 day of provision. Anyway, we have a contradiction here. How do we resolve it? Amar Abaye, nihide lagin dinahu leotube, miha ilamotible miamrinan le nechi le agra de leginato. Abaye said, indeed, the rider has a legal right to bring a jug of wine on the donkey and some clothes and so on, whatever he needs for 3 days. He does have the legal right to do that. And so that's what this Braita is teaching. That's true. However, let's say he doesn't bring it. Right? Let's say you get on a plane and you don't bring any carry-on, no personal item, not even a bottle of water. You're not carrying anything. Can you go to the desk and say, listen, since I'm not bringing anything, I want you to give me $20 back. Right? I paid $500 for the ticket. The $500 includes the right to bring a carry-on. I'm not bringing a carry-on. I want you to pay me back $20. You can't do that, right? Because the ticket is primarily for the person's body. You have a right, yes, to bring some personal item also with your body, but you're not going to pay any less if you do not bring it. Therefore, since the wage, the amount, is fixed for the person's body, and whether he brings a jug or not is not going to change the price, that's why it's permitted for the donkey owner to accept the wages, because it's going to be, let's say, $500 for the transport of this idolater riding on the donkey for 3 days is $500. Whether he brings a bottle of wine or doesn't bring a bottle of wine, it's still going to be $500. He's not going to pay less for that. So since the wages are fixed for the person, and he's not getting paid any extra for the wine, therefore, the fact that he brings wine, and he has a right to bring the wine, is true, but he's not. The wages are not. There's no extra wages for that. Therefore, he is allowed to keep the wages, even though he is, and his donkey is transporting this bottle of wine, but he's not getting paid specifically for that. Hechidame. Now, back to that Braita, we just want to explain the details of it. What are the circumstances? Are there places to buy provisions along the way? In that case, the donkey driver should tell the rider, hey, don't bring 3 days worth of stuff, bring 1 day worth of stuff, and you can buy more food. You can buy things on the way. And if there's nowhere to stop off and buy things on the way, then the renter should not be able to insist that the donkey driver only bring 1 day of hay. He should be able to bring 3 days of hay to feed the animal, because there's not going to be any place on the way. Amar Papa la siricha deshchiach lemitrach ulmizban me'avana le'avana. Chamar darke lemitrach ulmizban sochel lav darke lemitrach ulmizban. Papa says we're talking about a case where there are places to buy things from station to station. It's not all over the road. There's not stores all over the road, but there are stops. Or, every few miles there is a stop. Now, the donkey driver, he knows how to travel. He does this all the time. So he knows how to plan his trip, how to get some barley from here, and then he's going to stop off, and he knows where to stop and get the barley for the next day. So he can plan his trip, and it's sufficient for him to bring 1 day of barley. But the renter, he's not a regular traveler like that, and he doesn't want to have to rely on, where's the next stop going to be? How much should I get? He's not so familiar. So for the renter, he doesn't want to even think about that. He wants to bring enough food, enough clothing to last him all 3 days, and so he is permitted to do so. And now we have a story about Avu de Rav Acha, Bere de Rav Ika, the father of Rav Acha, and Rav Acha was the son of Rav Ika. So this is a complicated way of saying Rav Ika. Why not just say Rav Ika? Perhaps because it wanted to show that Rav Ika is in fact related to Rav Acha, who was a significant sage, and so this is Rav Ika, his father. Hava shafich lehu hamra legoyim ve'azel ma'abar lehu ma'abara ve'havu legulfe be'agra. He would work at the dock next to the river, and he would be a middleman between wine sellers. These were Jewish wine sellers selling kosher wine, and the buyers were from the other side of the river, and they wanted to buy it. Now, the sellers brought their wine in barrels, and the buyers would want it poured into their wine skins. And so Rav Ika would be the one that would pour the wine from the kosher barrels into the wine skins. The wine skins had been used before for yayin nesech. So once the wine gets poured in, then it becomes prohibited. But while it's in the barrel, while it's being poured, that's okay. And so he would pour this wine for the non-Jews, and he would ferry them across the river. They came from across the river, so he would ferry them back with their wine skins to the other side. And in his payment was he would get to keep the barrels that the Jewish sellers were bringing. They would bring it in the barrel, sell it for a certain price, and Rav Ika would keep the barrel, pour the wine into the wineskins, and that's how he made his money. Atu amru le Abaye. So some people came and told Abaye, look, he's profiting from yayin nesech, because after all, he's pouring it into these wine skins, and then he's profiting from it. Amar lehu ki katarach be'tera katarach. Abaye said, no, it's okay. While he's working with kosher wine. What's he doing? He's taking wine barrels that are kosher wine barrels, and he's pouring into the wine skins. So everything that he's doing, he's only touching and dealing with kosher wine. When it goes into the wine skin, then it goes to the bottom, mixes with the taste or the little bit of wine that's on the bottom of the wineskin. It becomes prohibited only when it gets into the wineskin. But he's already out of the picture. He poured it in for them, and he's good. Yeah, but Rav Ika wants the yayin nesech to be maintained in those wineskins, that the wineskin should not be torn, because if the wineskin will get torn, then he will have to use his jugs, that these are his payment, that's his profit. He'll have to use these jugs to pour that wine into the jug to save it, because the wineskin is stored. And we saw earlier that there is a problem for even maintaining yayin nesech, so he shouldn't put himself into a situation where he would want to make sure that the yayin nesech is maintained. So isn't that a problem? And the answer is no. Dematne behadaihu. Rav Ika would make a condition with the buyers that, listen, you better bring good wineskins, because if they tear, if they're bad wineskins, then your loss. I'm not going to provide a jug to save it. So therefore, once it's poured into the wineskin, Rav Ika has no responsibility, so he doesn't care about it being maintained. Or it could be that the buyers would bring barrels with them. This is a specific type of barrel, looks like this, and so they would bring, because they know just in case the wineskin will break, the buyer has a backup, and so the Rav Ika would not have to use his own barrels, so he doesn't care if it's maintained or not. Wait, but there's another problem that Rav Ika said was ferrying them over to the other side. So now he is doing work on behalf of yayin nesech. He's moving the yayin nesech over to the other side. The katarach bisura, he's working with and getting wages for prohibited wine. And the answer is no. Rav Ika makes a deal with the ferryman beforehand. He said, listen, beforehand, these people are going to come, you're going to bring them here, I'm going to pour them wine, you bring them back. And so it's his, I'm not paying you for that. So Rav Ika, he himself would not be ferrying them, and he wasn't paying directly for it. And so it was some part of the deal he made with the ferrymen that they would bring them. So he wasn't doing it. Or that he would give them special knots, kind of like a ticket that is hard to forge. So they knew how to make a special knot that not everybody would know how to make. And Rav Ika would give the buyers a knot and say, here, take this knot, give it to the ferryman, and then he'll know that you're a buyer, and he will take you back across the river. And Rav Ika would certainly not be taking them himself, laboring himself, and he made some kind of deal with the ferryman, would take them back, and so he was not involved in ferrying the wine back. Next Mishnah. If yayin nesech fell on grapes, just wash off the grapes, and the grapes are fine, because the grapes are not absorbing anything. They have a skin on them. But if the grapes were cracked open, then it's prohibited, because then the wine is going into the grapes, and you will be tasting the wine. Nafal al gabet tenim al gabet temarim. Im yesh behem benoten tam asur. If yayin nesech fell on figs or dates, it depends. If there's enough wine that it gives flavor to the figs or the dates, then it's prohibited. But if it's not giving flavor, then it's okay. Maseh bebaitos benzunin shevi goro garot besfina v'nishtabela chavit shel yen nesech v'nafal gabehen v'shal chachamim v'hitirum. And in fact, there was such a case of baitos benzunin. He was a wealthy person who lived in the town of Lod, and he brought dried figs on a ship, and there was a barrel of wine that was yahin nesech, and it fell on the dried figs. And they asked Chachamim, and the Chachamim said it's permitted because there was not enough to give taste. Zeh kilal, kol shebehanato benoten tam asur, kol she'en behanato benoten tam mutar, kegon chomesh shenafal al gabe gedisin. The basic principle is, if something that benefits from a forbidden item, if it imparts flavor, then it's going to be prohibited. But if there's no flavor, it's very little, then it's okay. For example, vinegar that falls onto split beans. Even if there is taste, but the taste is bad, it does not make the taste better. So it has to be something that noten tam, that it gives us enough to give some taste, and has to be positive taste, not that it makes it taste worse. If it makes it taste better, then it's prohibited, but if not, it's okay. Ma'aseh listod, we ask about this story of baitos benzonin. It seems that this story is contradicting the rule. The rule said, if it gives taste, it's prohibited. And then you bring a story where it's permitted. We're missing a line, and this is how you should understand it. So you should read it this way. If you have to add in, if it gives taste, then it's prohibited. If it gives bad taste, then it's permitted. And there was a case of Maitzos ben Zanun who was bringing figs on the ship, and a barrel of wine of yain nesech fell on them, and it came to Chamim, and they said it's permitted because even if it gives taste, it's bad taste, and therefore it's permitted. It's not clear if you mean that you have to actually add in these words, or you don't necessarily have to add in the words. It's kind of implied. It says if it gives good taste, then it's prohibited. So I can figure out if it gives bad taste, then it's permitted. And then it gives a story where it's permitted. One time there was a bunch of wheat, and a barrel of wine, prohibited wine, fell on the wheat. And Rava said, well, you're not allowed to drink it. So it was enough wine that the Jew was not allowed to be able to drink it. But he said you can sell it to a non-Jew. Since it's mixed into it, the wine is not there in itself, but it got mixed into the wheat. So you can get benefit from it, and you can sell it. You just can't eat it yourself. Itibe Rabba Levi le Rabba bar Levi challenged Rava from a baraita that says, "Beget shavad bo kilayim, hareze lo yimkerenna legoy, velo yasena mir da'at lachamor, aval oseh oto tachrichin lemet misvah." If you have a garment that has some threads of kilayim mixed in, and now they're mixed in, and you can't identify them to take them out, so you're not allowed to wear that because that's kilayim in it. You can't even sell it to a non-Jew. Because, although there's no problem for the non-Jew to wear kilayim, but we're afraid that the non-Jew might resell it to a Jew who will think that it's okay. because, you bought this from a Jew, so it must be okay. And also, you cannot make it a saddle cloth for a donkey, even though the donkey's wearing it. The donkey can wear kilayim, but someone might take it and say, this is a nice saddle. You know what? I want to make it into a coat. And then the Jew will take it and use it. The only thing you can do use it for shrouds for a met mitzvah. Someone that has nothing, no money, and so the corpse can wear it. The corpse is not chayav in mitzvot, and that way it's down there, and no one will use it because you're not allowed to use shrouds that were used for burial for any other purpose. And so this is a challenge because here, since something is prohibited, that for a Jew to use, you're not allowed to sell it to a non-Jew either, because maybe then a Jew will buy it from him. And here too, with this case of the wheat, where a Jew is not allowed to eat the wheat, it should be a problem also to sell it to the non-Jew, because the non-Jew may resell it to a Jew, and that Jew will not know that there's yain nesech that got mixed into it. So that's our question. Why can't you sell this kilayim to a non-Jew? Because he might resell it to a Jew. Here also, we should be afraid that the non-Jew will resell the wheat to a Jew. So Rava accepted this criticism, and he changed his mind. He said, you're right, you cannot sell the wheat as is to a Jew, to a non-Jew, because non-Jew will resell to a Jew. But here's what you can do. The Jew who owns this wheat, it has the yain nesech on it, he can grind it and bake it into bread and sell the bread to a non-Jew, not in the presence of a Jew. If he sells it in the presence of a Jew, then the Jew will assume, look, you bought it from a Jew, it must be kosher, and he'll buy it again. But if you sell it not in the presence of a Jew, then the Jew, generally, Jews do not buy bread from non-Jews, because that's patakum. There are certain circumstances where patakum is okay, but generally, they're not buying it. And so, that since it's not wheat, but rather bread, so you can sell the bread to the non-Jew, not in the presence of a Jew, and then it's very unlikely that the Jew will buy it from this non-Jew. Tenan, yeh nesech shenafal gabe anavim yadichen dehen mutarot. Vim hayu mevukaot asurot. Mevukaot in, shen mevukaot la. We ask, it says in the Mishnah, our Mishnah, that if prohibited wine fell on grapes, just wash off the grapes and it's okay. But if they were cracked open, then it's prohibited. So if they're cracked open, it's prohibited, but if they're not cracked open, it's okay. So in the case of wheat, we're talking about wheat that was whole wheat. And so why was this, in this case of Rava, that the wine fell on the wheat, why was it prohibited in the first place? It should be like grapes that are not cracked, and it should be permitted. Amar Papa shanechitehu il v'agab siraihu kebukaot damyan. Papa says wheat is different from grapes because wheat naturally, when it grows, has a slit. That slit is like a crack in a grape, and the wine does enter into it, and that's why the wheat in this case was prohibited. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.